I'm just excited about how things are moving so quickly in AI and the ability for us to do things faster now. I used to wake up with this thought that you're behind. Like you wake up first thing in the morning, oh no, I'm already behind and I'm just trying to catch up. I think with AI, like implementing a lot of tools and a little bit of automation in my life, I've been able to feel a little bit more grounded, a little bit more like I'm buying my time back.
This is BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgenson.
Welcome out to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio. I'm your host, Tyler Jorgenson, and today you get to meet somebody along with the same time I am meeting them, Jermaine Ee, who's currently the founder of HeirLight.com, and we're going to spell that out for you because it's like, you know, an heir, as in somebody who's, you know, receiving or inheriting something. But he's got an amazing story about why this company is so important to him. But what I am also fascinated by is all of the companies he's done and worked on in the past, everything from toys to now legal stuff. And that's such a wide spread. But welcome out to the show, Jermaine. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Tyler. Glad to be on.
All right, Jermaine, I like to start at the very beginning. When was that first moment in your life that you realized you were an entrepreneur?
There were indications early on. So when I was fairly young, I want to say 11 years old, I was ripping off, and I think it's long enough now that I'm not going to get in legal trouble, but I was ripping off music on cassette tapes, packaging it and designing the cover of it and then reselling it in my classroom. So much that I got suspended from school, actually. So if I had to look back now, that was the first indication that, you know, I was a good DJ in some way. I knew what my classmates wanted.
Were these like your custom mixtapes or were they just straight bootlegs?
It was custom mixtapes. They had a storyline. We had the artwork that reflects the storyline, and I just knew what my classmates liked.
Yeah, that's killer. I mean, yeah, I love that, and I love that it was back in the days of cassette where things were just a little bit more tactile. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have that early story. What was the one where you first like really stepped into business?
I think maybe the first one with a business plan was by accident. So it's possibly my first job, but the job felt like more of a project. So I was at a dinner when I was 17 years old, and this guy who's sitting kind of across the table, he owns a toy company. He owned a toy company they sold. And I was talking about how YouTube is the place where if you want to get attention, YouTube is the new place to do it. This is 2010, by the way. So product placements and creator agencies, they don't exist yet. And so a day later, this owner called me and say, hey, no one on my marketing team is talking about this. Why don't you come in and we'll hire you and you just work on this one thing. Get us on YouTube channels and place our products in there where it makes sense. And so I was doing YouTube product placement. 2011 was the first one of a remote control helicopter. And it was aired on TV. Actually, it was aired on, I believe, on ABC as well. So what a full circle.
Yeah, amazing. That's fascinating. I'm laughing because around 2011, 2012, I was working in some of those kind of things. I'm like, I wonder if I bought something from your product placement, just to be hilarious. So yeah, I love how early you were. How did you see that trend? How did you, like, what caused you to be able to see what was happening on YouTube and what gave you the confidence to share that with, you know, an owner of a business?
I think a big part of it is my rebelliousness. I never fit well in school. I was always, you know, that kid who wanted to do anything else but sit in school. And so I went to 3 different high schools for that reason, because all the teachers have kind of given up on me. But my parents were always super supportive. They're always like, as long as you just keep going and just stay out of trouble, you know, get through the system, play the game. So they supported everything that I did. And a lot of times I think it's the ignorance that helped, but also I didn't have a choice. I wasn't made for a job. You know, I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't have a resume. So I think I was forced into entrepreneurship in some ways.
Yeah, I don't think that's uncommon either. I think so many entrepreneurs, not only were they built for it, they were not built for the opposite of it, right? They couldn't so it's almost by default or just by exclusion of other options. So you get started in this toy business where you're now helping build digital marketing campaigns early on, and this is 2011, 12, 13. Since then, you've done a lot of things, and so we're going to jump to what you're working on now, and then we're going to fill in some gaps in between. So since then, you've done a lot of other businesses. We're going to talk about exits. We're going to talk about what to look for when you're starting a business, what beginning with the end in mind, passion, and fulfillment. What is it that you're building now, and what led you to build this with such a sense of dedication?
Yeah, I'm very lucky that I got to experience a wide range of businesses and even a stint in politics, actually. So I worked for the Treasurer of California in 2017, 18. And from there, it shaped the way I looked at the world, how money works and power and things like that, and how media works. But this most latest business, I think it's the one that I've been searching for the last few years. I wanted to do something meaningful. I didn't want to take on investors. I wanted to not have this pressure of like, I got to get there by Series A. I got to hit daily active users and things like that. And a conversation with my parents right down the street here in Pasadena, actually, in a Thai restaurant, gave me this insight that they had this underlying anxiety of running out of money before they die. And what I realized was that it wasn't because they didn't have enough. Actually, it's quite the opposite. It's more so of like they had something, but they didn't know how it translated into the rest of their lives. And so this lack of clarity made me realize that, you know what, the first step of living a fulfilled life is to know what you have and what is enough. And so I set out to build a GPT, essentially a chatbot that allows my parents to chat with this chatbot and save all the things that matter to them: assets, relationships, bucket lists, and things like that. And so this pivoted into a estate planning app, because what I realized is if I had all this information about you, I can probably help you write a will.
Yeah, fascinating. And so it's amazing how for entrepreneurs, when we're solving a problem for ourselves or for our family, we can immediately see, oh, if they have this problem and this solution works for them, it might work for other people. How did you take it from something that just is helping your family to what was the next step to get it to helping more people and to actually building something bigger?
Yeah, so I think there's this concept of like the messy middle, the forgotten middle, many versions of that. And I think it's similar for where we are. So people with resources tend to have attorneys. People who have no resources tend to be very clear on what they have, because typically it's not so much. And so everybody else in the middle, though, it's like, well, we have enough, but does it justify having a trust? Does it justify having an attorney? Does it justify paying $5,000 to set up something? And what happens is a lot of time people just don't take action. So the most common factors of people thinking about an estate plan, thinking about death generally, is life events. It's like getting a new house, a kid, a new job, someone around you pass away, one of these life events. And so what I realized is like with AI, we can actually build a very, very good system where you can have a conversation with the AI that doesn't judge you, that doesn't have this subconscious thought of like, wow, you're very successful in your business, but you actually don't know anything about estate planning. And I think that actually stops a lot of people from going to an attorney.
Oh, yeah. I think that many people are embarrassed that they don't have it already done, or that they are ignorant to certain questions. And so I think you're absolutely right on that. That seems to be a very common concern. And so, you don't have a legal background other than probably having had to write a lot of your own agreements and contracts and work through these types of things personally. What gaps were there when you started building HeirLight outside of the AI side of things, and how'd you fill those?
Yeah, so HeirLight is the first consumer app that I'm dabbling into. And it's very different from, having a B2B sales cycle, which I'm very familiar with. So one of the things is we over-engineered our first iteration. We thought, this idea sounds great, let's put it in there. But we didn't really consider that our target audience required a little bit more design thinking, required a little bit more communication on the features. So that was a pretty big thing that we went through. Our legal bill is pretty high. We have both the IP side of it as well as data protection. That's one side. And then the other side was the estate planning. All 50 states have different laws. And so we're not in a position to give legal advice. We're kind of like LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, and all these companies. We're essentially a form filler, but we're just more intelligent in recommending and giving you the best practices based on your situation. And I think one of the things that we realized was a huge gap is that there's a lot of families in this country where English is not their first language. And to talk about something so personal, not in your first language, is a challenge. And so with AI, we're able to do that in many more languages. And that's yet another legal hurdle that we're going through, but we're coming around.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I see the gap in the marketplace and what you're solving. I think it's brilliant and I think it's super needed, but it doesn't come without its own hurdles, right? And now this might be the first direct to consumer level app that you're building. But what did you learn from all of your more B2B businesses that you're able to apply into this?
Yeah, so in the past, I think I didn't have a lot of clarity of what I was chasing. So my first startup marketing space, we did AR filters for Snapchat and things like that. So we essentially functioned as an agency and went out to sell to businesses, to brands, to help them place a logo inside of a geofence in Snapchat. This is like 2012. And frankly, that was us chasing hype, chasing money. It was fun, and I didn't really have a clarity of direction. I think the biggest thing that changed in this startup is just I know what I'm building it for. And I just have more clarity of where my skill set fits. And so in startups, I think generally there are three things you need. You need a really good idea, you need capital, and you need talent. You need people that can actually get it done. And so I actually went out and built a list of 4,000 engineers that fit the criteria that I like, where it's fairly affordable to me in my circumstances. And I went out to interview about 100 of them. I ended up talking to 40 that I really considered and landed with 2. And so the biggest difference between this startup and prior is that I used to try to do everything myself. And this time I'm in a position where I can say, all right, let's find who is affordable, available, and complements my weaknesses. And let's go out to solve the problems that way.
Yeah, that's a lot of good takeaways there. I really like the idea of a good idea, having capital and talent. Now, a lot of the companies that you did, you were starting when you were young and just getting going. Maybe you didn't have a lot of capital and you were the only talent, but you were focused on, hey, I've got a good idea, right? How do you balance bootstrapping and figuring it out on your own, basically doing no capital, versus when you know it's time to inject cash into the business? Like what are your decision metrics there?
So my first 3 investors were Visa, Master, and Amex. So I think I was on a minimum payment plan for probably 5 years of my life, just trying to hit the minimum. I do not recommend people do that. I think it comes with being young, I believe. And then my next investor was Uber. I was driving Uber for probably 8 hours a day and working the other 6 or so on my startup. My current answer for my startup is I'm going to raise money when I figure out a reliable source of revenue in my own portfolio. So once I figure out if it's paid marketing, then I'll probably have to raise money. And it sounds like I'll go back into venture capital. But if it's not, then I hope that I find a lane for channel partnerships, for example. Maybe we can partner up with a bank. And in that situation, I may not have to raise money. And if I do, maybe it's smaller. So I can probably go to a bank and take out a loan instead of raising equity. So,
yeah, I love it. I think a lot of our listeners, a lot of people here on BizNinja are the kind of people that bootstrap it or start something while they're working a different job. For years, I have said, hey, it's a great idea to start something of your own and build something, but don't you don't need to burn those ships until you're ready, right? Like some people think, oh, I got to do it and go all in. And I'm like, sure, you could always go get a different job, but there's also no reason to make life unnecessarily difficult, right? Pay the bills, get things going, and then figure it out, especially if you've got people depending on you. But how do you make the decision? I mean, ideas don't seem like something you're short on, right? You've run a lot of different companies, you've done a lot of different things. How do you decide which one gets your attention?
I think it's actually developing a sense of learning how to say no. It's about self-awareness, right? It's like, what do I really care about and why do I care about it? I think that's a big part of it. I think back to your point right before this, so I don't think there's enough information out there for explaining the different kind of ways to start a business. Not everybody needs to raise venture money. In fact, it's actually quite stressful, and most businesses are not for venture. And so I think perhaps more information out there about the kinds of funds, the SBA loans, for example, or when does private equity comes in, and private equity isn't always a big roll up. It can actually be quite small, and also taking over, retiring businesses. I think that's also, it's been a hot topic lately, but there's not really a lot of explanation as to, what are the tangible things that you can do. I think for me, it's always been about aligning what my interests are as well as what I can take on. I'm lucky enough to have seen a lot of success around my friends. I think a bunch of my classmates at USC went to do really great things, and I lived in New York for a few years. And I think when you come from an environment of these places, and you realize that it kind of humbles you a little bit. Even at my most success, when I have the most success, I was very humbled. I'm always talking to people who are 10 times smarter than I am, doing something that they're obsessed about. And all I can wish for is to find something that I'm equally obsessed about so that I can work at it with joy. And I think HeirLight is that right now.
That's really cool. Yeah. I also went to USC, went to Marshall, and I remember some of my classmates, while we were in class, had exits larger than I've ever had. And it was like a side project. It's like, oh yeah, I sold this company to Google because I just decided I didn't want to keep doing it. I'm like, pardon me? Yeah, it wasn't a big exit. It was just like 5 million. I'm like, pardon? And they were the only shareholder and all this, and it's like, these are their bad projects. And I'm like over here building totally different businesses. But I have found how important it is to have those types of conversations to challenge you about what's even possible. Because, I grew up in with a very hardworking father, but wasn't a business owner. And so what was real in my life was very different than what friends of mine who grew up with entrepreneurial families or business owners or doctors or something like that. And I think sometimes just getting introduced to new perspectives and new possibilities is so powerful. Who are some people that you look up to that are kind of your mentors in business and entrepreneurship?
I know it's cliche to say, but I think my dad, for a very different reason. So I have the whole immigrant story. My parents came to the US late 70s, to Oklahoma actually, of all places. And one thing that I realized is my mom just had crazy empathy for people. Her ability to put herself in other people's shoes really showed me how it's done. And for my dad, it's the relentless pursuit. It's like I've watched him become super successful and watched him failed, lose everything maybe twice, and came back at it every time. I think beyond all the skills and all the wisdom, watching him get back up every time was what I needed to say, it's okay if this isn't it. As long as you don't quit, you don't fail. The day you decide to step off and exit the arena is when you admit defeat. And so I think that is more important than anything else that he could have given me.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And then you worked with your mom for a little while too. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so during COVID, I think like many people, I came to the realization that I wanted to spend more time with my parents, that this time is finite. And so my mom, after raising 4 of us, she went back to work. Despite having her MBA, she had imposter syndrome. She's like, oh, my English is not as good. I should just go for an admin job. And so she did. She went for an admin job at a logistics company. And in 8 years, she worked herself to become the vice president of imports, which, from LA, it's mostly imports. It's not really export. And so she was running a big division in her company. And what we realized is that she was just working all the time. She was very happy because she was fulfilled, but she didn't have any time to do the things that she loved, all the bucket list that she put off after raising 4 kids and going back to work. And so we started a freight forwarding business together. Essentially, she ran it. I did all the back office, the legal, the finance, the hiring, the setting up systems and things like that. And she crushed it. She did really well. But what came out of it is actually this office that I'm sitting right now in Pasadena. I have my startup office right across. And so I've never spent more time with my parents my entire life, because every lunch we would just walk across the hallway and say, hey, let's go eat. And we're just spending time together. And it was the most meaningful thing that we could have built together, which is this intentional of designing our lives, of realizing what matters, which is time together.
I'm such a big believer in lifestyle design. And, most people don't start really thinking about that until they're a little bit older and saying like, oh man, maybe I'm not living the life I want. And it sounds like you've been pretty intentional with that throughout your life. What would you say to others who are maybe going to get into business or considering getting into business with family members? What are the pros and cons? What should they look out for?
Yeah, I think my inspiration came from Gary Vee, because he worked with his dad for a long time. And I actually asked Gary this last summer, not to throw a big name drop here, but I asked him, we had a hiring challenge. So I wanted to hire someone and pay them more because I thought retention is important. I found someone good. But my parents are immigrants, and they have an immigrant mentality of, I'm not going to throw my dad under the bus. My mom's going to take this one. So my mom was like, this is what they should get paid. This is market rate. Let's just pay them this. So I talked to Gary about this, and he's like, hey, just remember, you come from a place of love. You love each other first, and then it's business second. And so your job is to help your mom see that this is not the end all be all. Like, if this person came in a little bit too expensive, it doesn't work, we can always fire them. And that conversation is a reflection of really everything that we worked on, which is like, it has to start from a place of like, we respect each other, we have love for each other. It's going to be hard, a lot of cultural difference, generation gaps. But at the end of the day, remember that it's a blessing that you get to do something with someone you love. And when it's hard, so is life, right? Life is never that easy. And to do it with people that you love is probably what makes it worth it.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful reminder, because you're going to have conversations and management discussions and differing opinions, but remembering that the relationship is what matters more, and what matters, it's the biggest piece. And so remembering that love, I think that's really great advice from Gary, and glad you embodied that. What are some things that you're really excited about building right now?
I'm just excited about how things are moving so quickly in AI, and the ability for us to do things faster now. I used to wake up with this thought, I think many entrepreneurs do, I think it's a trait, that you're behind. Like, you wake up first thing in the morning, oh no, I'm already behind and I'm just trying to catch up. I think with AI, like implementing a lot of tools and a little bit of automation in my life, nothing too complicated, mostly housed within ChatGPT, I've been able to feel a little bit more grounded, a little bit more like I'm buying my time back with some tools. And so I'm most excited for this. Every aspect of my life is getting an overhaul, a rethinking of what matters and what is needed.
I've been having conversations with my kids about AI, and the analogy that I've used is that just like a hammer, AI is a tool, right? ChatGPT is a tool. It is not inherently good or bad. It's all about how you use it. And if you want to build something beautiful and amazing, you can use the tool to help you. If you want to be destructive and use it in a bad way, you can do that. And I think we're seeing the younger generation starting to push back against AI. And I think that's because they're seeing people they feel that there's like a theft of authenticity and a theft of artistic expression. And so I think we're seeing this interesting balance. And I'm saying all that to point to what you said, that you're finding small ways to just help you like be more productive and not feel like you're behind. It's finding small ways to use those tools in a way to like free up your life and not replace yourself, right? And I think it's so important to stay human in an era where many entrepreneurs are moving very digital. I have some firm rules about AI that I could, I never have AI act as me. Nothing worse than having a conversation with someone and then referencing that conversation and then being like, oh, that actually wasn't me. That was my AI. I'm like, well, that didn't feel cool. Anyway, there's my AI rant a little bit, Jermaine. But so I want you to reflect back on all of your businesses, everything that you've done through the years. And what is one like consistent piece of advice that you share to other entrepreneurs who are getting into, struggling to grow? What's one major recurring theme that you've learned through the years?
Struggling to grow or starting, I think these are quite different pathways. But I think this applies. I think self-awareness in the sense of like knowing whose opinion is driving that narrative in your head is probably what helped me the most. I think something Brene Brown said a long time ago, I just picked it up. I don't think it's super popular, but it's the way she got past her imposter syndrome is to keep a small piece of paper with the names of people whose opinion matters. And whenever she loses track of that, just take a look at that. I think we're very lucky. We live in a community or a culture where wins and losses are both celebrated. As I travel the world, I see places like the UK or like Australia that has this tall poppy syndrome, where whenever someone gets successful, they get shot down. Or in a more communal culture like the one I came from in Asia, where your failure, your embarrassment is also your family's failure. And so it makes it really hard, really paralyzing for people to go out there and change. And so I think we're so lucky that we live in a system, a culture that celebrates people trying new things. And so I think what people need to have is the self-awareness of what do you really want and whose opinions really matter. I came up with this a few weeks ago, and I thought, because of my startup, the whole theme around my startup is clarity of where you are. And I wrote this down that says, clarity is love in practical form. And that's what I'm on right now. Like, I'm just trying to help people gain a little bit more clarity of how they're spending their time and what they're spending their time doing. And so if that's building a startup, having that clarity is really, really good.
Well, I think that answer is perfect for whether someone's just getting started or just figuring out how to grow. I think self-awareness and clarity are massively important. As we get to the end here, Jermaine, you and I have talked a little bit about lifestyle design, and so I think this will be an easier one for you than some of my guests. But what's one item on your personal bucket list that you're going to accomplish in the next 12 months?
So, well, it's actually a harder question than I anticipated. So I know I mentioned this before we hit record, that my mom had just passed, and so my entire life has shifted a little bit. So I always thought I would live here in Pasadena. My mom would be a great grandma, and my dad would be a great grandpa. But since that happened, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what is next just yet. My partner's from Ukraine, and so our lives are between Europe and California. But I would love to grow HeirLight to a place where it can help so many families who would not have it otherwise. And so that is my current focus, and that's the goal.
That's good. I hear you. Hopefully, when you get an answer, I want something for Jermaine. What are you doing for yourself this year, right? I want you to message me on that. But I hear you, and I know sometimes the focus of what we're creating is it's such an all-encompassing vision that takes that. But really appreciate you sharing all these insights. Everyone go check out HeirLight.com, and we'll put the link in all the shows, wherever you're watching, tuning, or listening. You can check that out. To all my biz ninjas, it's your turn to go out and do something.